Welcome back to the Donkey Vote Political Podcast for another interview. And today we have the honor of having Ross Cadell, Senator Cadell, on the podcast. Senator Cadell or Ross, whatever you prefer me to call you.
Right, let's go
Thank you for
there.
joining
Yeah.
us.
Good morning. How are you?
We're great today. We're great this morning. Before we get started with the interview, could you give us a little brief explanation of yourself before we get into the question, just so the audience has a
Yep.
greater understanding of who you
I'm
are, just before we get
Ross
into the
Cadell. I'm a
questions?
senator in the federal government. I'm come from New South Wales, live at Redhead, which is about 20 minutes south of Newcastle, and I'm a member of the National Party in the Senate. So I'm in my 50s. Let's leave it there. 4 kids, 3 of which are in the house that may pass by at any given moment. But that's me. Sort of late start in politics, going in in my 50s, but long time involved in politics, going back over campaigns with the National Party for 10 years and then the Liberal Party way back in the 90s before that.
That's interesting as well that you work for both major coalition parties because from the politicians that we've talked to previously, a lot of them have just been part of the National Party or just part of the Liberal Party. But that's interesting that you work for both.
Yeah, well, the Liberal Party left me. Parents' property was up in Cessnock, which is 40, 50 minutes west of where I am now. And the Liberals originally ran for that and won it in 88 when I started, very early start to politics. But then they stopped contesting it. I went to the National Party. And unfortunately for the Nationals, I was a job lot. I came with the seat, so got there. But with the Nationals, I found a home. It's truly a family-orientated party and a lot less factionality, a lot less, griping at each other, more just working for people. It's really a lovely place and a great party.
Yeah, I think we've gotten that sort of message from a lot of the national MPs that we've interviewed previously as well. Because actually 2 hours ago, we were interviewing the former Deputy Prime Minister, Michael McCormack. So that was an interesting interview. And we've interviewed a lot of other national MPs. I think tomorrow we have your Deputy Leader, so Perrin Davey.
Yep.
So that will be a good interview to have.
Michael still holds me, and I am guilty of giving him the name Micmac when we had the Prime Minister there. He hated Micmac, and that was all on me.
We should have called him Micmac in the interview.
Yeah, that wouldn't have gone well.
Maybe next time.
What's it from Chris Cross had a song called Jump, and there's Micmac. That's where it came from back then, yeah.
You'll make a title of that then. You'll make the title of that.
Yeah, we'll title the interview with Micmac, right. aka. Yeah. We'll now get straight into our questions, actually, just because I'm mindful of time. But our first question to you, Ross, is how was your high school and university life, if you did go to university? And do you have any memorable moments?
Look, I was not the academic, and I'm still not now making up for it. So a lot of you people watching should know that I did really poorly in the HSC at the time. We didn't have an ATAR at the time. We got a score out of, I think, 500 going back. And I remember when I got my results, they didn't come this early. They came during the middle of the school holidays. And I was on an Air Force cadet camp at Richmond Air Force Base. I think I was on my cadet under officer course. And everyone's busy getting their results and phoning up and working out what they're doing. And I didn't care. So in my maiden, I went back. I was always going to be a fighter pilot. That's all I wanted to do. I chose subjects on it. I joined the cadets because I did this whole life. So I could become a fighter pilot, worked for marks that I was going to get. And a couple of weeks before the HSC, a specialist aircrew medical, a full day that you do post thing, they detected I had a heart murmur. And they were telling me that I was no longer eligible to be aircrew. I could do something on the ground, but I didn't want to be aircrew. So I hate to say it, I sort of gave up. I didn't study. I think I even showed up to my first English exam late because I just didn't care. I was lost. And that wasn't the end of the earth. We went through a bit of stuff and I worked for a bit. I learned to fly because I went and worked in a bank and I just did my private pilot's license because I was going to show everyone that, this was, they weren't going to stop me flying, and it didn't really matter. The RAF still didn't want me. So then I went off to uni based on, of all things, don't do this at home if you're watching. There was a television show called, I think, Family Ties, and Alex Keaton was a character, and he did commerce in America. So I thought, let's do that. That's how I based my course. Whoop. And don't hang your phone up like that. Sorry about that.
All good, Ross. All good.
No, so that was what it was like. It was really a course based on things at the time. I had no interest in it. It was just something to do. And I really suffered. I was lost for 4 or 5 years after the HSC without having a desire to do anything. And it was through the course I came up with marketing via the commerce course. And marketing, I had a synergy. I understood it. I understood the things behind it. It was just something I understood and knew in my heart. So then my career was outside of uni. I never finished the degree. There was opportunities within the Liberal Party at that time to work on campaigns and work with things with what I'd known on marketing. And that started me. But to be honest, from that medical thing 2 weeks before the HSC, I was probably written off for a good 4 or 5 years. No motivation, didn't want to do it. It was only when I found something I really loved that I was able to turn my life around.
Yeah, and I think that's something for a lot of us as well, for a lot of our fellow peers. I think, getting our results in the last couple of weeks has probably dampened our self-esteem about ourselves and what we think we can achieve. But, with your story there, Ross, you may not figure out what you really want to do for like another 5-6 years. Like it can come in the future. Like you may not know what you want to do currently, but if you try different things and discover what you want to do down the line, you could find a career that suits you, that you are passionate about.
And that's something, if anyone of your listeners is thinking, that's true. Find something you love. I love every year Jeremy Clarkson tweets that, he in the UK, A-levels what you do. And he flunked his A-levels, but he's living on his private yacht and living his best life. He tweets that every year to put it in perspective. But even during my career, post that, you think you know what you like and things change. You will fail as much as you succeed. But the answer is you're never judged on what happens to you. You're judged on how you react to it. So if you haven't got the mark you want, if you haven't got the course you want, the choice is, do you then step up and try to do the things you want to do? Do you find some passion elsewhere? The richest and one of my funniest mates is a carpenter, and he's just gone through carpentry, worked out, never went to uni, but he's a very, very smart guy. Now owns a business, turns over a lot of money, and he started off as a chippy. So just find things you love and work hard at it, because of anything, no matter what you do, you only get out what you put in.
Exactly. And I think for a lot of people as well, finding what they're passionate about is the most important thing, no matter, how much you earn. Like if you actually have a passion towards it and have a drive to succeed in something that you really want to do, the pay in that case is just an added bonus,
Yeah, correct.
So, do you have any also, so would you say your memorable moment was just the 2 weeks before your HSC English exam, just figuring out you couldn't go on and join the RAF, or would you say did you have any other memorable moments in high school?
So with all the memories and stuff like that, it's seminal that I just remember that disappointment, and I remember being lost. I remember lots of things going on in my life. I think the key thing for me was in marketing, just understanding something and innately getting it, and that gave me a direction, because I was like, fighter pilot, spend tens of thousands of dollars getting a pilot's license when I didn't want to fly for, one directional, two directional. So it was that understanding something else, which was marketing, which was marginal marketing. That was a real key thing, me discovering that, and that happened at uni. And not a lot of other good things happened at uni for me.
You don't want to get into that, or?
No, I think we're right. Let's just say we're lucky it was before social media and everyone had cameras on their phones.
Yeah, we don't want you to get into any trouble, Ross. So
that's right.
Yeah, we'll move on now to our second question. I think it's with you, George.
Yeah. So in your past career, you worked as a special projects director at the Port of Newcastle. Are you able to describe to us your work as a director? What sort of initiatives did you push in this role?
Yep. So the Port of Newcastle, for those who don't know, is the world's largest coal port. And the whole Hunter region, coal mines up the thing, and coming from Cessnock as part of it, and the Hunter, so many friends, so many people earn good wages in coal mining, which is something that is closer to the end of its life than it is the beginning of its life in the world. So at the Port of Newcastle, I helped assist with the diversification of strategies because to me, my regions, and part of the Nationals DNA is helping out the people that aren't in capital cities and how we can be good. And if we want to earn good wages, we've got to have good incomes and good industries for the future and good business sense. So we worked on stuff like the container terminal, which is very core to my being. If we can get a container terminal in the Port of Newcastle for importing, remanufacturing, reconstruction, exporting, that'll be a great job for things. And we worked on other such as different energy precincts, so gas, hydrogen, all those sorts of things to help not cut coal, but diversify away from coal to create other job opportunities, other employment opportunities, other careers for people. So for the people in the mines that, they aren't miners, there's so many engineers, they are people that work with tools in their hands. And it was a passion for me to enable them to finish their career with a tool in their hands, even if it was in a different industry, even if it was building things to export or reconstructing things that are imported. So that was great. And also to start that trend of getting on diversification of energy opportunities in the Hunter. We have lots of electrical plants. We have lots of Tomago Aluminium, the largest electricity user in New South Wales, 12% of the grid. Those things. So it was a really good opportunity for me to get in and try and make a difference to the people I grew up with, the people I work with, the people I go shopping with in the shopping centres, all need jobs like that. And that's what I was doing there.
Yeah, and I think something that we've also learned from interviewing a lot of politicians over the past couple of weeks is that, a lot of them have started up just, in their communities, as you said, as your work as a director, building up relationships with local members within their communities, fighting for their rights, and pushing initiatives to help the people within, I guess, in your local area, Newcastle. So that's a great way, I think, for a lot of people to get involved politically, even if you aren't part of a political party, if you're just there as a community activist or as a community leader. I think it's a good way to show that, you can care about your community and that they're getting listened to, even if you're not in a political sphere.
And it cuts across lines. So the local state and federal members, Tim Crackenthorpe, local state member in Newcastle, Sharon Clayton, the federal member in Newcastle as well, federal member of Shorten, Pat Conroy. These were important to us as a group. I'm a Nat. We are different parties, but to our region, our passion, we need these changes. And that's something, probably the best thing I've discovered since going into politics is there is, question time's a joke and we look like unmedicated mental health students or sufferers. But the rest of the time we work really across the aisles and help each other for good things for our regions, good things for our country. Should be more of it. I should be there. But even when I was working at the port, state and local, and even the Prime Minister's office at the time, which was ScoMo, all came together to try and help Newcastle and the Hunter be more. And that encouraged me. I know there's the question about, why did I choose to run later? But that was the real motivation for me, is seeing people come together to create an outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, just to touch on again, that's something that we've learned as well. I think Tobias and George can agree with me here that, politicians from across the aisle, no matter Labor, Liberal, National Party, even, other crossbenchers to an extent, they all come together to work on policies. Like, they might not have the same political beliefs or ideologies, but at the end of the day, they're all there just to serve the community and make Australia, in your case, a better place for Australians. So, you come to compromises and you come towards policies that, I guess, are the compromise between a Labor set of policies and a Liberal national set of policies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's something great that we don't get to see much often. As you did say, question time does paint you guys as mentally deluded people that just yelling at each other all the time. There's certain people within question time. I haven't watched much of Senate question time, but I know in the House of Reps there are certain, I guess, personalities within question time that are pretty rowdy, and you think that they're just there just to be rowdy and cause trouble, but at the end of the day, they are there to serve the community, and they're there for the greater good.
Yeah, and look, the old joke is that politics is show business for ugly people, and the question time is our premiere. We're out there being our worst. So there you go.
And I guess that's not always entirely the case. So,
I'm not prepared to say anything on that.
all right, then we'll move on now to our third question. Tobias.
Yes. In addition to your work as a special projects director, you worked in a small business and sports marketing with clients including the Newcastle Knights and the MotoGP. Are you able to talk about are you able to talk to us about your love of sport and how you helped enter the sports market?
Yeah, sure. So it was an interesting thing. I worked the transition between politics back to sports happened in '99. I think Kerry Chikarovsky's state campaign for the Liberals in '99 was my last. I was burnt out after sort of a good 5 or 6 years of campaigning. There was a lot of internal stuff within the Libs at the time. I wasn't confident in it. And to be honest, I wasn't doing my best. Sydney was the head office of the Libs, and I'm up in the Hunter. And so I left for a bit, but those skills were transferable. And I started off helping out some racing drivers and some series. We went with Tony Cochrane at the time and tried to get around in Tasmania of supercars, then went to the Middle East. And that led into working with Holden Young Lions, V8 supercar team, helping Casey Stoner try and get some sponsorship for his MotoGP career. And it's a strange thing when I look back. I never knew it at the time. These things are much clearer in retrospect. But what I found between a political campaign and these sorts of things, especially with race teams, was a unity of purpose. In a campaign, you have a candidate. In a racing team, you have a driver or a rider in a motorcycle team. And a massive team of people around them supporting them. So in the pitch, you've got your mechanics, your apprentices, your engineers, your team managers, all these sorts of things. And in a campaign, you've got ad people, researchers, all the things in head offices that they do. And they're all coming together with a unity of purpose to help what I would call the talent, the candidate or the rider and driver. And that unity of purpose is what I really fell in love with. And everyone coming together to just drive that very clear, measurable result. You can't set a time on a bike or a car that's rubbish or finish last and say that was a good job. You can't come last in an election campaign and say that was a good job. You have very clear, measurable results and coming together and winning or losing as a team. And I love that. I love that aspect of unity. And it was harder with the Knights because with the Knights, there was suddenly 25 players, a group of 25 and a different admin. And they were very different groups. They were self-sustaining in their own sizes where they didn't come together. There wasn't as much unity. But the Knights was at an interesting time. I tell you a story. I've got a jersey that I sometimes put up on my window at Parliament in the Senate. They thought they'd signed a sponsor, Gizmondo, who was a handheld gaming device. I think it's about 2005, 2006. And they never signed, but they did produce $26,000 worth of jerseys ready to run, got them all hand-stitched and never signed and never came. And I came into that spot. We didn't have a sponsor. We got Colin Allied on board again with the cross-bench of, I think, the New South Wales State Treasurer was Labor, Michael Costa at the time. He helped the Newcastle Knights and me get that very much so. And we turned it around. So the Knights actually made a profit in 2006. But that was a different time. It wasn't as unifying a purpose at the Knights. It was quite a different thing. But we did a good job. We got our things. It was a lot of yield analysis. And it's the like Mike principles at the time. If you remember, Michael Jordan, everyone wants to be like Mike. And we had Andrew Johns at the Knights. He was the seminal player of the time. And so it worked well, that linkage. But it's, again, not dissimilar to campaigns and just working out what people identify, the positives of what your message is, what our team was, what your product was, and making that the most important thing when you're talking to people in the future. So it was a good way to hone my skills. But then I made the fatal mistake of missing motor racing so much, and got involved in my own team and lost a lot of money and failed very big in that in a very short period of time. So got back into politics.
And I guess that's where you get your money back then.
Well, no, it's if you're going into politics for the money, you're going in for the wrong reason.
Exactly.
I keep joking about that. The my tax bill the year before I came into politics was bigger than the amount I earned my first year in politics. But anyway.
It's not self-serving, as we've said before. You don't do it for your own personal gain.
It's not, and that's look. If we're being honest, if I get really, really honest and open the thing on this, the disappointing side of the difference between being a campaign director and being a politician is a campaign director. Your goal's clear. It goes back to what I was saying before, that unity of purpose. Have a goal, clearly measurable result. Your job is the campaign. I don't have to run the country. I don't have to do policy. I don't have to do anything as a state director. It's clear. But my problem is now in politics is I think people blur the line about when you're a politician, you shouldn't be a politician. I think that's a bad phrase. You know, you're a leader, you're a member of the parliament, member of government, and your job is to make Australia better, to make people's lives better. And too many people get elected without that director role, without that clear role. They think their job's to stay elected. Their job is, I'm governing to stay elected. I'm governing to keep my seat. I'm governing to keep safe. And there's not enough people out there saying, no, the campaign director and the campaign team will go through my policies. I trust them to do their job on the election. My job is to make Australia better. And I think that's where we're falling down a bit. I think the governance of the country isn't up with the government of the country, and we really need to look at that. But that's a disappointment for me. But I think if I was looking at one thing that would be better, it would be that more people in Parliament govern for a better country, not govern to stay elected.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight there into your own opinions of the government as well. I think that is a pretty big thing as well. I think not to just pick sides, but it is on both sides. But there are people there who are a little bit self-serving, who just want to do all they can to stay in government, and they don't do it, I guess, for the better of the people. They do it for their own political gain to stay in power, and it is rife probably in both sides of politics.
Yeah, and it's a natural thing. Like survival is a natural instinct. I get that, and what I'm talking about is not natural. It is almost semi-sacrificial. But I think we're getting to a point in time where people aren't out there saying, what can the government do for me? They're just trying to avoid the government doing anything to them. And I think a bit of honesty, a bit of clarity, and a bit of governing in the greater good would be a way forward. And I walk the halls. I know these people individually. There are so many great people in Parliament. I'm surprised. We'll talk about that later. From the outside, I didn't think that. But we all get there when we fall to groupthink. We fall to for the good of the party, for the good of this, for the good of that. A line I've heard on our side from someone say, the job of opposition is to oppose. Well, the job of a leader is to lead as well. And I just think if you had this many good players in your football team and you weren't winning, you'd have to look at the way you're playing the game.
Exactly. And I think I will give credit to the Prime Minister currently, Anthony Albanese. He did play a very good game as opposition leader from 2019 to 2022, because he didn't specifically oppose all of the Morrison policies and legalities of the time, but he opposed certain things that he didn't agree with. But he was a very workable opposition, and was always trying, I guess, to make Australia a better place for all, and was willing to help the government wherever he could. So I think that's one of the reasons why, in a sense, he won 2022 federal election.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. Like Australia had never been through, modern Australia had never been through something like the COVID years, and anyone who went early was successful. Anyone who went late failed. But I just think it's not just him and other things. We face that problem every time a bill comes through in the joint party room. There's a lot of things I disagree with this government on a policy level, and some that we don't. But you look at a bill and you have to say, do you do a deal to make on something that's unpopular to prevent the unpalatable? If something is so bad, if they go and negotiate it with someone else, it gets worse. Do you oppose it and they've got to do the deal and make it worse, or do you sort of support it and try and make it a bit better? That's a hard thing. Like just being in the room, we aren't consulted on everything. A lot of things come to us where deals are done before we know about them. But I think there's opportunity for everyone to be better in Parliament, and that's right through every single party's caucus room, every single party, party room. And if we just start getting that focus of being a bit more honest, and I'm really disappointed in one of the things is the lack of paperwork and lack of honesty about the bureaucracy of government. We call for papers, we ask for information all the time, and there's so many not given. I think if you don't trust the people with the information you make decisions on, the people shouldn't trust you. And that's a real concern for me.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. And I do realize we've kind of strayed from the question a little bit. The question was around sports marketing, and we've gone down the political path. But it's fine. Yeah. It's totally fine. We'll now move on to our next question. So, who would you say is your political role model or / idol, or do you have multiple?
They have multiple. I think if you go into politics and you're not yourself, you are trying to emulate someone else, I think you're going to fail. And so I take certain things from different people throughout history. So clearly, I think Keating was the master of making the complicated simple. I look at a lot of his speeches. I look at a lot of
That's
his
interesting
writing.
With Labour Prime Minister as well.
Yeah, it's true. But I think he was very good at simplifying the message. And coming from the marketing side, that's something I value. Howard was simply the last grown up in the building when it comes to running a country the way it should be run. But I noticed at that stage, 24-hour news cycles hadn't really started. So would anyone be able to do it again now? I'm not sure. And then you go back to Menzies that built the prosperous nation over such a long time post World War II that Australia was built on. So you take all those things, these values, these skills, these things they've done, and you're aware of them and you try and emulate, but you've got to be yourself. You've got to use your values and your judgment going forward, because any copy of any of those three is going to be a poor copy. And we just have to try and do better than that.
Yeah, and I think you're one of the first politicians we've actually ever interviewed that's actually said they're just going to be themselves, and they take things from different other politicians and prime ministers, for example, from the past. I think that's an interesting point, though, because, as you said, you can't try and emulate someone else, because that, for example, Keating was good in his time, but I doubt he'd be good currently. So, you take things, good values from each politician in the past, and you try and hone it and make yourself, your own version of who you can be as a politician. And I think that's one of the good things about, taking things from multiple people and having multiple role models, because if you just base yourself on just one specific political idol or role model, you're just going to be the exact same as them. And as I said before, in their time, they might have been a good politician, but now their policies and the way they did things might be completely off what the country needs.
Yeah, and you never stop learning. This is the thing in politics. We sit in the chamber enough, and I see the leaders of the Senate, Simon Birmingham and Penny Wong, and they are just outstandingly smart humans and different sides of politics, and they've got different skills. And, I look at the strategies on both and how they talk, and I'll give you Minister Wong, Penny Wong stuff. When she's on a roll, she's across the table and she's looking at us and she's into us. When she's a bit uncomfortable, she's looking up at the gallery and looking up at the cameras, and different eyes, you pick that. But they're incredibly smart people all around us in Parliament. And if you can't learn and watch and observe that and make yourself better, you don't deserve to be there.
Exactly. It's, as I think we're all going to learn, all three of us, into the future. Life is just a learning experience. You're never ever going to have 100% knowledge in everything.
Yeah.
Even if you're an expert in a certain thing, there's still so much to learn. So sadly, we're going to be lifelong learners even outside of high school.
You have to be. I was talking to my son. My son's starting HSC now. He's doing it next year. And we spoke just yesterday about trying your best and what it takes to be successful. And do I like doing, 14-hour days in Parliament and then coming home and doing 2 hours of reading about the next day, so I've got some understanding on it and doing guarantees. No, I don't. But it's what's required. I could dial it in. I could show up and ask fluffy questions and not know stuff. If you're going to give things a go, you've got to give it your best. And that's why I think I go back to my core message at the beginning. Find something you like doing. Otherwise, you're always going to resent it.
Exactly. Then in that case, it's more a chore than an actual passion.
Mm.
Yeah. We'll now move on to our next question. I think this is with George again.
So Ross, you also spent nearly a decade working for the New South Wales National as the director at one stage on political campaigns. How did this experience of working in political campaigns help you run your political campaign and help with your political ambitions?
It helped solve my political ambitions. Getting out was, I got out 2 years before I got elected, and I was sort of completely out. I thought I'd had my time. I was on the state director side. It's an entirely different role working in the organisation. As I said, it's about getting people elected. It's about dealing with memberships. It's about dealing with financial laws around election campaigns. Are unbelievably hard, as previous directors Nathan Quigley and Ben Franklin and I know. It's the one thing you're scared of is going to jail because you put the wrong donation in the wrong column. We had great financial supporters, and Kathy Chalmers, our state director, was absolutely instrumental in making sure we did that well. But it's a very compliance-based role with a very creative side, which is the campaigning. And I loved it. I loved the ads, the NATS, because we run in really regional seats. We've got our own media, TV stations and radio and everything in each electorate we run in. So we get to shoot a ton of ads. I think we shot, 40, 50 ads most election campaigns. So lots of creative juices. And that was really a nice outlet. It was a good way of going about it, but it did not prepare me at all for going into politics. The idea of being a member of parliament, I'd never worked in a government office. I'd never worked for a member of parliament going in. And I'm prepared to say I was shocked how hard, it's not hard, that's not true, how long these things are, how the processes are, how inefficient a day is. I think there's a lot of process and not a lot of productivity in the political process. And just that. So I think it's really difficult to know going into a political office just how frustrating it can be at not achieving things. You don't get a lot of validation for the effort you put in, the time you put in, the time away from your family, and all those things. There's not a lot of small, I've won, I've produced something, I've made something, I've done these things. It's a lot of process. So it could have been better, but it has shown me, if I go back through time, and I'm going back to my disappointment with the political process at the moment, back at the beginning, when we were working on campaigns, we used to look at a party's range of policies. They had a whole suite of policies, their mandate, their manifesto, if you're in the UK. And you used to be able to say, here are the policies, which ones are popular? And you used to be able to campaign on the popular ones out of a manifesto. And it was a good thing to do. I enjoyed it. I remember being in some groups back in the 90s where we did that. And you felt that you were just part of the process and you doing the right thing. Now I feel more and more people like directors and pollsters on a national level are saying, here are the policies that are popular, please adopt them. It's the other way around. Let's adopt these policies to be elected. And I think we're losing the basis of the differences of parties. Surely they're looking the same because their polling is very similar. But I think we're losing the fundamental differences of choice between different philosophies. So it was an interesting side to see that side of politics from a director and the different sides as a politician. And I actually hope we get back to the previous ones where we come out and we espouse our values and ideals and we try and campaign on that, win or lose. And I know, it's quite interesting amongst the youth that the Nationals came out 12 months ago, a bit more than 12 months ago, opposing the Voice when it was polling at 34% no. And the reasons behind that, everyone thought, why are you doing that? You're not popular. 65% of people want to say yes to this. And it was when we spoke to our communities, they were concerned it's another, and I'm talking regional and remote communities, there's another step that looks good that doesn't deliver anything. And so we came out based on principle, thinking we would lose, thinking it wouldn't be successful, and then it turned around. So that was a validation in my mind of standing up for things, no matter, damn the torpedoes, because they're what you believe in. It's truly, you examine it. There was a long process going up to that. And we're doing stuff like that on nuclear as well. We were early, the NATS were early out of the board on nuclear. I think Libs have picked that up now. And smaller things like pharmacies, when people are talking about cheaper medicine, that's great in cities where there's, I've got one pharmacy in my village, but there's 20 within 20 kilometres around there. In rural, remote communities where there's one pharmacy and they no longer get monthly prescription fees, they only get one every 2 months, that shut people down or just cut them out from life. So we've got to look at those things where we come out early, talk about our philosophies, and then promote them. And if our ideas aren't liked, we lose. How good is that? That's the way it should be. But we shouldn't be polling what's popular, let's say that, to get elected. It goes back to my previous point.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, always sticking true to your core values. And, as you said with the voice department, I probably have differing views to you on the voice department,
Yep.
in a sense. But, always sticking true to your own true values in a sense, and not doing what's popular is always an important thing, because, if you just do what's popular, you're basically becoming a populist party, always following, just trying to be a people pleaser. And at the end of the day, sometimes what the people want, in a sense, may not always be correct. They might do it in the anguish of the time and, in the disparity of how they're feeling. But at the end of the day, it might be the wrong choice. So always sticking true to your values and your core beliefs as a political party is so important.
It's so important. And we can all pull stunts and we can all do stuff and we can all be a party of protest. That's the easiest thing to do. Anyone can point out a problem, Finding solutions is the hard part of government. It is the really hard part of government, finding ways to fix things. It's a hard part in life.
Doesn't matter who the PM is, it matters what the policies are and how they're delivered for the benefit of our country. For too long, people have pandered to people on the media and the news and worrying what they think like and how they appeal. As I said, my wealth's $4,000 million. Do you think I give a stuff about what you personally think or anyone else? I care about this country.
On a very, very good salary, incredibly good salary. And probably by my own circumstances, it's spread pretty thin. And Peter, what I'm trying to do, if anything, is just emphasise that if for me,
after a little, I guess, ad break, for all our viewers out there to go, hop on their tank games or whatever they want to do, or have a little coffee break or whatever. We're back to our questions. Ross, do you want to continue on from where you left off there?
Yeah, look, I think where we're going with policy and where we're going forward is it's time for some serious discussions where we talk about that values and belief and where we were on different things. It's just time that we look where we're going as a nation. We shouldn't be playing catch up with the world and copying this and doing that. Australia should be deciding where it wants to go and ways. And the only way we do that is have choices, philosophies and choice of policies. And I don't think the political parties as a whole is delivering that at the moment.
Hopefully, maybe with your expertise in world of tanks, that could change in the future.
Well, COVID was a rough time for everyone, and as I stated prior, I had to grind out some sort of time. So I got on the M10 on World of Tanks up to 4th in the world, I think, and I think the M8 in level 4 on tank destroyers. I got to, I think, top 10, but I can't be sure of the number because got to do something during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least you were using your time quite wisely, I guess.
It was pre-politics, so it wasn't on the taxpayer dime.
At least we know if we got any tank destroyer competitions coming up, some international tournaments. At least we know that Ross can substitute and come on and dominate for Australia.
What was hard, because I'm in Redhead, I asked this question in environment comms about pings, because my Oz server stuff, I was pinging sort of 50 thing, but every time I go to Asia and get there, I was pinging in the 200s, 400s. It was really hard to be competitive. And that's one of the things we're looking in regional remote is the access to equal services such as that, because I got NBN, not fibre to the house. But it breaks down a fair bit, especially in rain. So this personal experience where I talked about before, I've got the Starlink now, but you can't game on that because the ping on that's 198 minimum, but it's good for streaming stuff like this.
Yeah, it's a bit. That's what I realized also when I was playing with some people in Asia. Like I was getting like 200 plus ping in here from Australia, so it's a bit rough.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's hard. When you're playing at the top level, that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Tobias as well, you spent a little bit of time in Ross's area a couple of weeks ago, didn't
Oh
you?
yeah, I was in Port Stevens.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Off. I think that like 9 years ago I left. So I went from the 4th to the 10th. So the Friday I went to Port Stevens. So from Friday to Sunday I was in Port Stevens.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world. We've got a problem up there now because this is this transition energy. All off Port Stevens, they want to put 400 wind towers, floating wind towers off the coast there where all the whales migrate, where the birds do these sort of things. And you've seen how beautiful it is. There are better places of the world, better places of Australia for wind towers than off Port Stevens. It is just absolutely pristine. So that's a local issue that we get involved in, and you've got to stand up on those sorts of things. So I'm not against renewable energy, but every source of energy has its place, and off Port Stevens ain't it.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful place. So
Yeah, and I think we got to try and of course, preserve the beauty of certain areas within Australia, and sometimes renewable energy, of course, is what we need into the future, but sometimes preserving that natural beauty that you've talked about with Port Stevens is more important.
Yeah, you can't protect the environment by destroying the environment. You have to find the right way to do it.
because you also
Exactly,
have to
you can't.
remember about the sea life also, because it's close to the sea. You also have to help the sea life also, not just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right then. We'll now move on to our sixth question. So, we're racing through these questions actually, Ross. But yeah, Tobias.
Yeah. What made you run in the 22 federal election for the National Party, and what made you join the National Party?
So, interesting story going back to the original history. I never joined the Liberal Party. I was signed up as part of a branch stack by a friend. And he said,
You're
I've got
gonna
to come
admit
to a
that
meeting.
now?
Yeah, I can admit that now. I didn't know. He said, I've got to come to a meeting with you. And I went to a meeting. I said, this is all a bit odd. And just one thing led to another, and then marketing, it all became quite real all of a sudden. But with the Nats, when they changed over, stopped running for Cessnock, it was just a bunch of people that I could, much more locally focused, less Sydney focused, much more real. And I've got to say the philosophy that I found was they back the doers, people who build, grow, make, mine, care, and not so much the marketers and the insurers and those sorts of things. And it was a really nice group of people to be around. You didn't feel you had to protect yourself from factionality. Like when I joined, when I was joined to the Liberal Party, I didn't know that I was joined for a stack and therefore I was part of a faction. Didn't know it. Didn't have any clue, no visibility, didn't understand politics. It was only became apparent down the track. But I didn't really decide to run either. I was at the port. We were looking at what we could do to diversify for the hunter. And as I said, we had a really good bunch of people willing to help out, talking from people in the Prime Minister's office, in the Treasurer's office, the local Labor members, so both sides of politics on that. And I was frustrated because there was a lot of goodwill there that wasn't transmitting itself or transitioning itself into actions. And it's really frustrating when everyone's on your side and we're making small slices. And we had a prime ministerial visit at the Port of Newcastle when there was some money to help upgrade the port, and got talking to, I think, Ron Finkelstein, who was the Prime Minister's principal private secretary in the car. And we're talking about this, had a chat. And one thing led to another, and I left the car talking to him. I thought, right, we're running for the Senate. It was just about trying to push things along, make these things happen. And as I said, from the outside, I was concerned that wasn't enough happening in politics and not making that transition. But what I didn't know is how difficult government is to make stuff happen at all. Now I'm in it, I'm surprised that anything happens, because the bureaucracy is very well funded, is consistent, is there over a long period, has control of information, feeds the information. And by the way they're designed, and they should be, I'm not saying they shouldn't, they're very risk averse. They are very slow and determined and deliberate in what they go about. And someone from private enterprise, someone from marketing, this is my antithesis. It's get stuff done, make enough right decisions so that even though you make some wrong decisions, it's not a problem. I feel governments almost make no wrong decisions. That's almost impossible, but it slows everything down in making decisions. And I am stunned to the Australian people how slow everything is. And if I was designing the country again, I think we're coming up to 250 years since first settlement. I think we're coming up to over 125, 150 years as Australia. I think it's time to get back to having a look at our constitution, and is it still fit for purpose in the separation of powers? Because as popularism comes, the federals want to reach down and help in areas that are state bodies. I think if states are passing the buck up to federals for stuff they don't want to deal with, vice versa, local government's not recognised in the constitution. I think there's lots of ways to make Australia better by modern Australia sitting down and saying, this was the constitution in 1901. What can we change about going forward? Now, I understand how unpopular referenda are, but if you do it in a bipartisan way, there will be some agreement to make some things better. And I think we owe it to the country and we owe it to ourselves to try and make things better. I'm very much of the view that a bit of the US style, make the first top 20 or so, arbitrary number, people in a department political appointees, and you get rewarded or punished for how you perform overall. If you want to get things done, you get things done your way, and if they're unpopular or don't work, you suffer the consequences of it. The idea of using the public service as a protection, and it's the way they've been built, and I get that, is the antithesis of good government for me. It is really just it makes a minister or a member of parliament the complaints department for the department, which is wrong. And we need to do so much more than that of our country. We are the lucky country, not because we won lotto or anything like that. We're the lucky country because we were established at a time with low public service, low rules, a new nation when technology was so close to us, and we got the can-do attitude, and we've lost that. And that was why I wanted to get in. I wanted to get in to say, hey, let's do more. But now I'm stunned that anything happens. And I think there's really good reasons to have things like anti-corruption, but they shouldn't be questioning why you make decisions. I have no problems if they come and inspect my bank records and I have to justify every transaction every month. I've got no problem in the world of being open and honest with my finances and seeing if I'm getting things the wrong way or doing things wrong. But if I'm elected because I believe that roads should be painted pink, and I go out and paint them pink when the department says they should be grey, that should be on me. I should suffer the consequences of that. And it's not because I'm corrupt. It's not because of anything else. It's because that's where we come from in our policy view. And I'm really worried for Australia that we're just going to become a nation of can't do and a nation that is cautious, not making big strides, not leading the world, but merely following along in its footsteps.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is not really talked about much, I would say, in politics nowadays. So good thing you brought it up here, Ross. Especially the public service. I think in general as well, public service, I guess people do talk about how they are pretty self-serving sort of people, and that sort of thing as well.
But I don't think they are. I think it's the way it's been created. I think, whenever you play a game like Monopoly, read the rules so you understand the game. That's number one. Anything you're going to play, read the rules. Go back to World of Tanks. Download the hit shots, know where you want to hit something. But the public service has been put there to manage risk and to advise, not to get things done. Even little things. You go down, I mentioned being a pilot. CASA is the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. It's clearly about safety, not about promoting air business in Australia. And so there are many things they do, which is in their remit and their job, that holds up the growth of the air industry of Australia, where we should be quite strong. It is by design, public servants doing the right thing by the way it's designed, and you can't blame them for a design that slows things down.
Yeah, and I think, as you said before, a lot of, I think in that sort of sense, government accountability is important as well. Not just blaming the public service, I guess, just because you can't do something because they in turn said you couldn't. Actually taking responsibility for yourself as a minister or as a chair of a parliamentary committee is important as well. And I think, in Victoria, we've seen that as well. A lot of, I think with, I don't know how much you know about the suburban rail loop. But
How much is it costing
yeah.
you? A lot.
Yeah.
I go back to when I was state director, and I won't name the person because I don't know this is technically by the book, but there was a decision made, a policy portfolio going forward was to raise the speed limit of a road. And for good reason. It was a decent road and there was a lot of accidents due to tiredness on there, raising the speed limit, quicker journey, also greater productivity. So they wrote through the department and said, hey, we want to raise the speed limit on this road. And the report didn't come back and say, here are the reasons you should, here are the reasons you shouldn't. A single letter came in back saying, you will have blood on your hands if you do this. That's not advice, that's opinion. That's what we have to get away from. And so
It's
suddenly
crazy,
the minister
they said that.
Yeah, the minister can't go ahead with this policy thing and something they believed in at all, because what happens, they go, yep, we're going to raise it anyway. Someone dies on the road. Suddenly that leaks out, because the one thing we can always see is a good department that'll leak. And that comes out and suddenly, oh, you're culpable because you were told this would happen. We need to get away from opinions coming there, and we need to get those facts, the for and froms, and need to be able to sign off. As I said, my thing, if I want the roads pink and the advice comes, the pros are the roads will be brighter and they'll be seen from space. The negatives are they'll be slipperier, they're wrong, it'll cost a fortune. It's not a thing. If I still want to sign the same thing saying do it, I'm happy to do it, but they're pros and cons, not opinions.
And then if, more accidents happen, I guess at that stage, in that example, you'd be more accountable and you have to take responsibility for those actions.
That's exactly right. That responsibility thing is the key. And we just need that. And everyone's saying, this policy is corrupt, or this one's taking policy, or this. It just doesn't happen at a level that I've seen. We have a gift declaration. We have great fun writing expansive gift declaration things in our office. It's become an art form. But they aren't buying favour. You notice them, you're there, you're thankful for some stuff. But if ever you're a sort of person that says, oh, I got a ticket to a football game off this person, therefore I'm going to do exactly what they want, you're not going to last in politics. You're going to be found out. It's sometimes nice to get these things and enjoy a little perk, but they don't change any decision whatsoever.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll move on now to our final question for you, Ross. So I guess this is the big question, that kind of the reason why we're doing the podcast. So finally, what's one piece of advice you'd give to students in 2024, especially those who are entering university or high school, or even those who are entering year 12, like your son you previously said before?
Yep. Yeah, so Lockie, like I said to him, do your best. Whether you know it or not, the times you're experiencing now are the best times you'll have in your life. They are the golden times. You don't have, predominantly, you don't have big mortgages, you don't have big expenses. If you have money to spend, you can spend it doing the things you want to do, and make things count. Balance your life with doing your best at work and enjoying your life, because we don't live to work, we work to live. And do your studies hard, try and find something you enjoy. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. You're going to resent it. If you're doing something you don't like now, you're going to change in 10 or 20 or 30 years. So save yourself some time and hatred, move now, but just value the time. Enjoy your friends, enjoy your family, do your very best. Set some goals around what you want to achieve that are achievable, and have a good time, because as I said right at the beginning, no one judges you from what happens to you. They judge you by your response to it. And bad things will happen. We'll get all sorts of things that you can't control in life. Take your time. I wish I had the wisdom I had now on that as a younger person, because I would have avoided so many things I could have easily, but passion gets you. You're there. I've been wronged. I've done this. I've done these different things. But it is a very best time. We have technology like we've never had in Australia. Unfortunately, you guys missed out on 80s music, although you can still download it because that was awesome. You'll miss out on that I had. But it's just about squeezing the most out of this time. So don't just study and put yourself in a room. Go to the shows, go to the concerts, dance like no one's watching. Do these things, because when you're my age, you regret the things you didn't do, not the things you did.
And yeah, I think just for us as well as young people, as you said, we do as much as we can nowadays,
Yep.
I mean, within the law, of course, within the law.
Fair point.
But yeah, just try and do as much as we can, I guess, and have as
and
much
that's
fun as
it.
possible.
It's friendship groups, things like you're doing. This is so great, this podcast. Getting out and doing something you love, trying to make a difference. These things are great and they matter. They matter to people. If one person hears a recording, said, I heard a senator of Australia stuffed up his HSC, screwed around for 5 years, worked in a bank, did a flying lead, went out, and he still became a senator. That's a great thing. Thank you for doing that and helping out some people there if that matters. But it is, youth is wasted on the young, they say, but don't do that. And those decisions, have a crack. It's almost Star Wars, do or don't do, not try. And that's the way of doing things. It's just do your best, engage in life, work hard, do these things. And karma isn't anything other than effort getting reward. That's what it is. Effort gets reward and good deeds get rewarded. Bad deeds end up where they should be. There's a line in Billions that I've only just started watching many years later. But it is, what's meant to happen always does. And that is so true.
Yep, and as you've been saying as well, always try and within every circumstance, within every situation, always take the positives within every situation, and always try and work hard as possible, because one of the great sayings that I've always tried to stick by is hard work beats talent, because talent still has to work hard. So hard work, in a sense, if you work hard enough, you will achieve your rewards and you will get rewarded and achieve what you want to achieve.
That's exactly the conversation I had with Lachlan, and he's probably upstairs listening. So I'll say the conversation I had with Lachlan yesterday was about that. He's going his HSC year, and his report had decent marks, but lots of efforts were midstream or comments about could do better. And that was what I was disappointed in him. But I didn't say you must do more. It's his decision to make in his life, and I pointed out to him that this is the time for him to make his decisions, whether he wants to have a crack or not have a crack, get the most out of life. And we have a family rule in this house. It doesn't matter how you do, as long as you do your best. If you go out and get beaten 8-0 in a soccer game, Mitchie goes kart racing and comes dead last. If he is doing his best, I'm proud of him. If Lachlan goes out and, nails a high TER or ATAR and just dials it in, I'm not proud of him, because that's what we're talking about. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter how you go, as long as you try your best. It's our household motto. And if more people do that, don't beat yourself up over bad results. Just look at your effort. If you've done the best you can, that's all you can go off. And so many people will be sitting there saying, what if nowadays? And there'll be people that were, as you say, talented, that got poorer results than other people that ground out a result. Like, I'm a muppet at World of Tanks, but I managed to grind out a top 4 result there. But it's just by grinding and working. And that's what I think. Your life isn't over. Your life is just starting. And, you can go on to do anything in this world if you find your little channel, if you find your little niche. And you do that by sampling the world. You do that by traveling. You do that by enjoying. You do that by saying yes, and do more of that.
Yeah. And, as I said, I really appreciate you coming on as well, and sharing your household motto, and as well, sharing your story as well, Ross, because for a lot of people out there, this is a tough time these last couple of weeks figuring out their results, and
Yeah.
hearing it from an Australian senator, high office in Parliament, going to Canberra, that you flunked your exams and didn't do
Yeah.
well as you would hoped, but at the end of the day, you still found your passion, 5, 6 years later, and you ended up getting to such a distinguished office. It kind of shows that, anything is really achievable in life. And, if you work hard, persevere, go through hard times, because there will be hard times in life. That's
Yeah.
life, sadly, Life's not all just a bed of roses, there's thorns, sadly. But yeah, if you just work hard and, do your best, eventually you will achieve what you want to achieve, as I said before.
No, that's 100% right.
Yeah. So yeah, those are all our questions for you, Ross. I do realize it's a pretty busy time of year, only 6 days to Christmas, especially with your young kids, Lockie and I forgot your other son's
I
names.
got Lachlan, Mitchell, Enwin, and Leo.
Oh, four. There's four of you. There's
Yeah,
four as
yeah.
well.
He
That's,
said 4.
3 boys, 1 girl. Enwin's a girl.
she must have a nice life.
She would prefer she be anywhere else but in a house locked down with 3 boys.
I do really appreciate you again for coming on the podcast. Hopefully you share this to your kids when it gets posted. Hopefully it'll be
We will
completed
let you know.
within the next
We will
couple
let
of
you-
weeks.
We'll let you know that one.
Will do.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we'll
guys,
let
and
you
thanks
know,
for everything you do.
yeah, thanks, Ross.